Welcome to the Fearfully and Wonderfully Me podcast, a podcast designed to help you increase your influence, develop your leadership, and maximize your results.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's podcast episode on the purpose of purpose. This is based on one of the chapters in my book, Leadership Gems for Women. I've done several podcasts in a series, kind of sharing a little bit of my thoughts on the chapter. And of course, not reading the chapter to you. If you really want to dig into the topic deeper, of course, you can get the book. But really sharing some thoughts that necessarily aren't in the book, or just additional thoughts that I've got. And today's topic, it always gets me just fired up because I love talking about being purpose driven. And I think when we start to think about that, that's really the essence or the art of intentional living, is being purpose driven, right? Being focused. And the magic of that comes because it allows us to align everything behind that purpose. Purpose is clarifying. It gives us a path forward because it gives us direction. And it also gives us a filter. Because once we really have been able to tap into that purpose, our purpose, then it really allows us to use that as a guideline in saying this does not fit in line with that purpose, or this does fit in line with that purpose, right? So it really becomes clarifying when we figure out that central core purpose that God created for us and created us for as well. And so I love to talk about that. If you haven't read Rick Warren's Purpose Driven Life, it's an excellent book that really helps you think through a purpose driven life from a spiritual aspect. And one of the things that I love about that book is it really, I think it's over a series of 40 chapters. It walks you through a chapter a day on helping you drill down into a purpose driven spiritual based life. And I think that really what the core of this concept is that our purpose is derived from our values, right? Because what's most important to you is going to some extent influence your purpose, and vice versa. And what I mean by that is, let's say one of your central core fundamental most important values is your family. And that is going to be really a clue in a lot of ways that some of your purpose may be in serving a role as a family member, whether that's a mother or a spouse or whatever that may be. If that's one of your fundamental core values, that very well could be a clue and a guiding principle for finding your purpose. And of course, I'm really saying all that with the assumption that maybe you have a few clues to your purpose, but you haven't really tapped into it all the way yet. And that's perfectly okay. It is absolutely a journey, and there's nothing wrong with that. Now, if you are already well on your way to here's what my purpose is, then major kudos to you, right? But a lot of times we start to narrow our focus and figure out some of our purpose. But as we continue to grow, we really hone in on that razor sharp, thin line of purpose and being purpose driven. And when we start that journey, like any growth journey, we don't know how far we have to go to get there. We just have to be intentional about growing so that we can continue to grow towards that purpose. And that may change and refine over the years. For some people, it may not. Some people are fortunate enough to stumble onto their purpose from a very young age and find their gifted zone within that purpose and execute out on it. I'm not one of those people. It took me a while to figure out who I wanted to be when I grow up. And maybe I still am figuring that out in some way, and that's okay. But what I'm talking about here is, even as you're in that stage of growth and growing towards the purpose, you can always be purpose driven, right? Whatever clues you have right now towards your purpose, you can act on them and use them today to filter out actions and choices and decisions on how you spend your time or energy. What's the best use of your time? Are you stewarding your energy wisely? And for me, that really, it has been powerful because I'm one of those people that I like to say yes to everything. Life is exciting. Opportunities are everywhere. And I just love to take advantage of all of them. And I realized at some point that activity doesn't necessarily equal accomplishment. And I had to learn to start saying no to a lot of good things, but it allowed me to say yes to the greater things for my life, for my purpose. And that's played out in so many different ways. But what it's allowed me to do is, number one, it's freed up my time and energy for things that might be fun or good or rewarding in some way, but they're not really in harmony with my highest and best calling, highest and best use of my time. So, for example, when someone contacts me today and they reached out by LinkedIn, it was one of those random LinkedIn messages from a contact you got connected 4 years ago, and then out of the blue they send you a message, usually to want you to sell you something, or want you to watch a video they've done or endorse them or something like that. And you're like, I have not even had a relationship with this person, right? We've had no contact beyond connecting 4 years ago, and then suddenly you're sending me an email pitch or a LinkedIn mail pitch. But it was this person that reached out and was doing some sort of fashion survey, which there's nothing wrong with that. But one of the things I was able to do very quickly is come back to that person and say, I'm sorry, I really have no expertise in this area, and it wouldn't be helpful for you, and it would not be a great use of my time to participate in a survey about the fashion industry. Like I have no experience there. I have no expertise there. Maybe I have an opinion, but at the end of the day, it's just an opinion and not a great use of my time to spend 30 minutes in a survey sharing it. Right. I've got a lot of other things I can do with that 30 minutes. And so that's just an example of recently something that's popped up that I go, this is not in alignment with my purpose. I need to just say no to that opportunity. Gracefully say thank you, no thank you. And that's been one of the biggest lessons. When we talk about being purpose driven, it really allows you to leverage the power of and the focus of being intentional, right? Because then your choices and decisions become easier to make, even when it's hard. Sometimes you want to say yes to some things that aren't in line with that purpose. And you certainly can, but just doing so with the realization that it's taking away from some other opportunities that may be more closely aligned with your purpose. And what I've come to realize is that if it's an opportunity I should say no to, odds are there's somebody better at that anyway, right? If it's not in alignment with the highest and best use of my time and in line with my purpose, then odds are it's in better alignment with someone else's purpose. And so I need to recognize that if I'm saying yes to the things that aren't as much in alignment with my purpose and values, I might be taking that opportunity away from someone who needs to be serving in that role. So that helps me, keep that perspective on it. So a couple of things to finding your purpose. If you're not ready to dial in that yet, or you don't think you're there yet, whatever there means, I think there again, it's very essential to look for clues in your core values. That's fundamental, right? Finding your core values, because those are going to be so central and key to your purpose. And, that's the critical thing. A lot of times we are drifting through life, and it's sad. It's a shame. It's a waste, because you only get one life. So I certainly hope that you're not just drifting, but you are striving to be purpose driven. And if you're not quite yet there with where your purpose is, that's okay. But be intentional about growing. So a couple of key things on how you can intentionally grow yourself in that area. Number one, books, of course, are always what I think is the best way to grow yourself. Of course, podcasts are good, or videos are good. That's absolutely nothing wrong with that. But the power of a book is it allows you to slow down and think about things as you're reading them, and allows you to absorb them kind of at a whole different level. A book allows you the time to slow down and think and reflect. And, that can be very powerful. But you do have to be intentional about growing and developing yourself, particularly if you're not there yet in respect to living your life in alignment with your purpose. So that's the first one. If you're not intentionally on a growth plan, reading, developing yourself, then start today. It doesn't have to be fancy, right? A plan for growth doesn't have to be complicated. It can be as simple as I want to read 1 page a day. Mac commits his commitment to himself is 1 paragraph a day. And then he talks about, sometimes when he reads that first paragraph, he's like, I just have to read the 1 paragraph, but then he might find another paragraph and another paragraph, and it leads to more, and that's okay. But however small that commitment needs to be, just make sure that you are committed to that growth, reading a page a day or a paragraph a day or whatever it is. And it's okay to read more than that, or, spend more time developing yourself, but make sure that you are intentional with, here's how I'm going to grow in the next few weeks, few months, this year. I've shared with you several times before, part of my growth plan is reading 50 nonfiction books a year. And that averages out to about 1 a week. And I've had that, that's just been part of the way that I stay on track with my growth, is making sure I'm intentional about reading a nonfiction book a week. And that's the only rule that I put. It could be someone's story, autobiography. It could be, something relative to wellness. It could be a leadership and personal growth book. But just making sure that I'm intentionally carving out time to develop myself. And that's one way I stay on track with it. I have a little spreadsheet with the titles of the book, the weeks of the year, and I just know that I haven't been intentional about this. I need to make sure I'm getting back on track with getting my reading done. Now, that works for me. That's just one of the ways that I ensure my growth. But there are lots of things. I focus on growth in the physical dimension by running a marathon. I just a couple of weeks ago finished running the Boston Marathon. And that was a huge, huge goal in my life, because I had to work so hard to qualify and then train to get there. And not just everyone can be accepted. And so it was a huge goal, and certainly a bucket list item to cross off. But the reason I am intentional about setting that goal for myself in the physical dimension is it ensures growth, right? I have to focus on eating better if I want to run better. And so then this year I've really been focusing on sleeping better and getting enough sleep. And that's made a huge difference in my training and my running and how I feel, honestly. So, but the key here is growth can be in many dimensions of our life, right? It can be in the spiritual dimension, the relationship dimension, our physical health and wellness dimension. Absolutely. And so it's okay to have more than one area of growth. Maybe your growth plan wants to deal with different dimensions of your life, or maybe you want to pick one to focus on for the next few months and then change it up. Whatever works for you. There's no wrong way to grow. It's just whatever works best and serves you best in growing. So that's number one. That's always going to be the key thing. Number two, I think writing and reflecting on what you're reading and learning. I love quotes. I collect quotes. I love great quotes. And one of the things that I love to do is when I get a good quote, I capture it, I write it down in my file. And then later I can go back and I can reflect on those quotes and I can think about them. And that's powerful because it allows me to have a different insight or a different perspective. And so that's the second thing, right? Number one, reading will always help you grow and get closer to clarifying your purpose. But number two, take time to reflect on what you're learning, how you're growing, what's working for you and helping you grow. And then last but not least, just sit down with a blank piece of paper and brainstorm on a personal mission statement. Stephen Covey talks about this a little bit in the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And it's an interesting exercise to just sit down and go, if I had to write in one sentence what my mission is, could I do that? Right? That's the key is boiling it down to a one sentence where I could say, this is my personal mission. This is where I'm called to serve. This is my purpose. This is where I'm purpose driven. Now, you're not going to get there in a few minutes. It may take a few days. It may take a few weeks. It might take a few decades. But if you just sit down and start and kind of let that marinate in the back of your brain, and then go back to it and revisit it from time to time and see how it feels. Do you need to refine it? Do you need to revise it? Maybe you've grown since you first wrote it, right? But sit down and just brainstorm on that. There's no wrong way to do that, right? It could just be that you want to identify some key values and that adopt that as a mission statement, purpose-driven statement. But these three things are really helpful in helping you get closer to that purpose. And there again, it's a journey and you just have to grow. It's just like driving across the country. You cannot see that far, right? But you have to drive to the first bend in the road and you can see a little further, and you can drive to the next bend in the road and you can see a little bit more. But to boil all of that down, the purpose of being purpose driven is first and foremost, it's going to allow you to fill out and lead a fulfilling life. But don't miss the fact that it's going to help you increase your influence, because it's going to allow you to stay focused on that purpose. And there again, it's going to help you push away the things that don't really fit with you, that aren't in alignment with your values. And that's going to help you increase your influence because people respect that. Not everyone will appreciate that, but most people will. And the thing is, very successful people, very successful women realize early on that they aren't good at everything and they can't commit to everything and everybody and be everything to everyone and everybody. And so if you want to be very successful, it's absolutely critical to learn to say no to the things that are not as great for you. And so you have the time, space, and energy to say yes to the things that are great for you. And that will help you increase your influence. Until next time.